Hi everyone, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Just to let you know, superheroes are one of my favorite sources of action entertainment. Films like The Incredibles, Megamind, The Dark Knight Trilogy, and Teen Titans. These films are very awesome and very endearing to me. However, there is actually one source of entertainment company who I seem to have mixed feelings about. And that company is Marvel. Now don't get me wrong, Marvel is a great company, but I can't consider myself a fan of some of the superheroes that they've made over the years. I mostly rented the ones like the Hulk or some of the Iron Man films, or the Captain America films, or whatever. Like I said, I mostly rented them from Netflix instead of buying them. Anyway, moving on. Our subject isn't just going to be a character made by Marvel, but it's actually, I think, might have been the very first Marvel superhero ever to be put on the big screen. The famous web slinger himself, Spider-Man. Created by writer and editor Stan Lee and writer-artist Steve Ditko, he first appeared in Amazing Fantasy number 15, which was cover dated on August 1962. Lee and Ditko conceived the character as an orphan being raised by his Aunt May and Uncle Ben, and as a teenager having to deal with normal struggles and adolescence in addition to those of a costumed crime fighter. Spider-Man's creators gave him super strength and agility, and the ability to cling to most surfaces, shoot spider webs using wrist-mounted devices of his own invention, which he calls web shooters, and react to danger quickly with his spider sense, enabling him to combat his foes. When Spider-Man first appeared in the early 1960s, teenagers in superhero comic books were usually relegated to the role of sidekicks to the protagonists. The Spider-Man series broke ground by featuring Peter Parker, a teenage high school student and person behind Spider-Man's secret identity, to whose self-obsession with rejection, inadequacy, and loneliness young readers could relate to. Unlike previous teen heroes such as Bucky and Robin, Spider-Man did not benefit from being the protege of any adult superhero mentors like Captain America or Batman, and thus did have to learn for himself. With great power, there must always come great responsibility. Ever since that time, Spider-Man has been one of the most popular and commercially successful superheroes, as Marvel's flagship character and company mascot. He has appeared in many forms of media, including several animated and live-action television shows, syndicated newspaper comic strips, and a series of films which starred Tobey Maguire and directed by Sam Raimi. But then in 2012, a reboot was made, which was called The Amazing Spider-Man. In that film, like most teenagers, Peter Parker is trying to figure out who he is and how he got to be the person he is today. He's also finding his way with his first high school crush, Gwen Stacy, and together they struggle with love, commitment, and secrets. As Peter discovers a mysterious briefcase that belonged to his father, he begins a quest to understand his parents' disappearance, leading him directly to Oscorp and the lab of Dr. Curt Connors, his father's former partner. As Spider-Man, he is set on a collision course with Connors' alter ego, the Lizard. Peter will make life-altering choices to use his powers and shape his identity to become a hero. Now, this film was a bit better than the ones directed by Sam Raimi. And unlike those films, Spider-Man doesn't save the day all by himself. He does get some people to help him, like the police, Gwen, and a few others. I'll give this film an 86%. And now, almost a month ago, a sequel was made, which happens to be my main subject for today's blog. Now, I know it's been a while since I've seen the movie, and for some time I've been planning on blogging the movie, but every time I tried to, I've been having too much on my plate to do so. But now, thanks due to the fact that I'm out of college and I now have some more free time, let's just get this movie over with. Released on May 2nd, 2014, the movie is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, here we go. Now, we've always known that Spider-Man's most important conflict has always been within himself. The struggle between the ordinary obligations of Peter Parker and the extraordinary responsibilities of Spider-Man. For Peter, there's no feeling quite like swinging between skyscrapers, embracing being the hero and spending time with Gwen, but being Spider-Man comes at a price. Only Spider-Man can protect his fellow New Yorkers from the formidable villains that threaten the city. With the emergence of Electro, Peter must confront a foe far more powerful than he is. And as his old friend Harry Osborn returns, Peter comes to realize that all of his enemies have one thing in common: Oscorp. Okay, my thoughts on this movie? Well, to be honest, this film did have some romantic complications, but it was amazing. I mean, some parts did have me cover my face in a few scenes, and however, I should also mention that I'm a tad arachnophobic. I mean, whenever the film shows a close-up shot of a spider, it gives me the creeps. Also, this film does give some more character development to Peter. Plus, the action scenes are really badass and scary at times. Now it's time to move on to the cast of this movie. Our main hero, Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, is played by Andrew Garfield. Who was famous for being in films like The Social Network. Now, as Spider-Man, he's an orphan teenage boy who receives amazing Spider-Man powers after being bitten by a genetically altered spider in the first film. He first uses his powers to try to hunt down the killer of his uncle, but soon decides to use his powers to fight crime as a vigilante. Garfield did explain that the suit that he now would wear in the film would undergo a new design. Garfield hoped to bring back the theme of him being an orphan, stating, "I want to keep exploring that theme of being fatherless, being motherless, searching for purpose, and finding a purpose within himself." He felt that it was a responsibility to take on that role, and that he does not take it lightly. Meanwhile, Max Charles reprises his role as young Peter Parker. Peter Parker's first love interest, Gwen Stacy, is played by Emma Stone. Who was in films like Zombieland and that god-awful Croods movie. Anyway, as Gwen, she's a high school student and Peter's love interest. I already said that. When asked about Peter and Gwen's relationship in the sequel, Stone said she saves him more than he saves her. She's incredibly helpful to Spider-Man. I mean, it's like he's the muscle, she's the brains. Next up is one of the villains of this film, Electro, aka Max Dillon, played by Jamie Foxx. Who was in films like Ray and Rio, and also will be said to being in, well, the new Annie film coming out this Christmas. Max Dillon is an electric engineer who works at Oscorp Industries. Fox described the character as a nobody who initially idolizes Spider-Man. He develops an obsession with Spider-Man after being saved by him, and obtains his powers through a big accident at Oscorp involving electric eels. Now, in my eyes, he's the best character in the film. However, I feel like his looks almost kind of look like another supervillain, one that the former governor of California played as. Alright, let's move on, shall we? Now the other villain, the Green Goblin, aka Harry Osborn, is played by Dan DeHaan. Harry is an old friend of Peter and son of Norman Osborn. He was sent away to boarding school around the same time Peter's parents disappeared, and meets Peter for the first time since then in the film. He eventually assumes the role of Green Goblin after Spider-Man refused to help Harry. The rest of the cast includes Sally Fields as Peter's Aunt May, and Chris Cooper as Norman Osborn, the president of Oscorp and Harry Osborn's, deceasing father. And he does an amazing job in this film as well. And now to move on my final words of this movie. Above all, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is an amazing sequel. I mean, it's not great, but still good with all the action that the film offers. Spider-Man gets more development, along with Gwen, and several new villains are really cool. I don't know if I can fully get into the Marvel spirit, but my rating for this film will have to be an 80%. Well, that's all for today, everyone. Well, I promise that my next vlog is going to be something that I would consider to be something that I consider a Father's Day film. Something like that. Be sure to join me for that one. Mustang Power!